Good afternoon, everyone. We are thrilled to kick off this afternoon's keynotes with Barry McCarthy. We're going to be covering a topic that many of you have probably been thinking a lot about in the last couple of years, which is change. But before we get started, my name is Noelle London. I am the founder and CEO of Illoominus. We are a data analytics company that helps organizations to activate their DE&I, or diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies. And Barry McCarthy here is the president and CEO of Deluxe. Fun fact that you may not know about Barry is that he's actually only the 9th CEO in the company's 106-year history. Barry is originally from Chicago, but has worked at many of the leading fintech companies throughout the course of his career, including First Data, Network Security Solutions, as well as even being at a Silicon Valley-based startup called MagnaCash. Something that has been kind of a common thread throughout Barry's career is that he's been at the forefront of a lot of leading technology. He helped to lead the Apple collaboration when he was at First Data that led to Apple Pay, as well as the collaboration with Google, which led to Google Wallet as well as to Android Pay. So a lot of really interesting technology change that you've seen throughout the course of your career. Do you want to talk a little bit about your most recent role as CEO of Deluxe?
Sure. Well, you've obviously done your homework, so thank you for that. So I've been the CEO of Deluxe about 3.5 years, and honestly, when I got the call from a headhunter to come and join Deluxe, I sort of chuckled. And I chuckled because I said, you realize that I've been spending the last 14 years of my career trying to get rid of checks. So why on earth are you calling me to come and run a check company? And they said, do a little bit of homework. And what I found at Deluxe was this incredible set of assets that just really needed to be repositioned and reimagined for a different future. And the core assets that I saw at Deluxe were a great cash flow, obviously from checks, declining but great cash flow. But the real assets were 4,000 bank customers, 4 million small businesses, and master service agreements with hundreds of the world's leading brands. And I really believed that with that footprint, we could do something pretty special, and we've set the course for the company to become a payments and data company. And really proud that as we go into next year, the largest business in the company's portfolio will be our payments business, which will be the first time in actually the company's 107-year history that we've had something bigger than our check business. Wow. So very, very proud of that. And we've done that in the face of COVID and all the rest of the challenges everyone else is dealing with.
Wonderful. And you just wrote a book called Small Business Revolution. You have, as you just mentioned, you have over 4 million small business customers. So you probably learned a lot about small businesses through those customers along the way. But tell us a little bit about why the world needed another book around small business.
It's such a great question. I had never sort of set my mind to writing a book, and I had the opportunity to speak, and I was on a panel with Sally Krawcheck and Baron Davis, the NBA superstar, at Dreamforce just before the crisis. And we were talking about all we knew about small business and how we're helping small business succeed and how it's the backbone of America. And the Wiley Publishing House came and talked to me afterwards and said, we think there's a book here. And we declined, and I said, I don't have time for a book. And a year went by, and they kept calling, and we finally said, you know what, especially during the crisis, small businesses are absolutely the backbone of the nation. And that we did have a lot of knowledge that we could share, and we took all the lessons we had from our company, try to put it together in an easy-to-read conversational book, and that's how the book came about.
Yeah, very interesting. That's really interesting. One of the kind of the big thing that came out of our conversation last week, we were talking, and you joined Deluxe 3.5 years ago. You were probably still drinking very much from the fire hose when everything started to change around you.
Yeah.
We were beginning to see this is a global pandemic. You have a social justice movement. You have kind of every organization redefining what a workplace means to them. and you've led your company through all of that change. So we'll keep it high level because we don't have all of the time for the stage for the afternoon. But kind of three key areas that we talked about walking through is, one, your changing workforce and what that looked like, diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as looking at the industry overall and changing technology that you're seeing on the horizon. So on the first point around your internal workforce, everything is changing at the beginning of 2020. What did you see happening across your organization? You're looking internally, you're taking care of your people. What are you seeing? What did that feel like being in the CEO seat? And what did you learn along the way?
One of the biggest things I think I learned from, or one of the biggest aha moments maybe for me, was going from running a division of a company to running the whole company, and then walking right into the buzzsaw of COVID, how much people look to leadership to lead. And I know that sounds obvious, but I think in the COVID crisis, we would have regular daily stand-up meetings with the leadership team. We had twice weekly calls with anybody that wanted to join in the company. We provided every bit of feedback we could on what was happening with the virus. And people were just hungry for leadership and clarity and a plan. People want to run and be helpful, but they need to know what to do. And so I think, one of those early moments for me, because it was still pretty new, we'd only put the whole team together. The final person on the team was seated basically at Christmas. So it was 75 days. The new team was in place 75 days before we all went to live in our basements.
Wow.
And so we didn't have the operating rhythm. We didn't know each other. Weren't able to finish our sentences, but really had to step up and put together a plan and lead and over-communicate and tell people where we're going and being totally transparent. And I think that got us through the pandemic in a good way, and it built a lot of trust, so that as we came out of the other side, people were on board, ready to start revving the engines to get the place going again.
Yeah. What did that look like in terms of how is that continued and that theme continued, today? We're a couple years into the pandemic, but how is that continuing change that we're seeing, what's happening today?
I think probably like every other organization, we're really struggling with what is the organization of the future, right?
Right.
And so we had the good fortune in the middle of the COVID crisis to be able to re-engineer our entire footprint of real estate. We closed 60% of our locations over the crisis, and we sold our corporate campus with 54 acres and 300,000 square feet and moved to a 90,000 square foot space. Took a great space here at 400 and 285 for our technology and innovation center. And we got really focused on what we think our workforce is going to want from their workspace and the kind of environment and the culture and the place they want to be. And so we are now today a very flexible employer. So we tell people one of our core values is that we build trust, and that we trust people to be in the office more often than not. We don't take attendance, but we do think that there's value by being together. And we've asked people to be in the office more often than not. We've given them great, beautiful workspace to come and collaborate in. But we've been so serious about it that there are no assigned offices any longer in our spaces. So we remodeled, and people literally check in and check out every day for a workstation, a conference room, and building a culture around that. And maybe one of the fun little anecdotes about that, it was one of the earliest days that I was in our new headquarters, which is in downtown Minneapolis, and I didn't sign up for a workspace in the mobile app. I just squatted, and I sat down in a place, and I started doing the work, and a guy walks up to me, and we're all in masks, right? And he says to me, "Hey." I'm like, "Yeah?" And he's like, "You're in my space." And I said, "Oh, okay." And he goes, "That is my space, and I want to sit right there." And I'm like, "You can have your space." But it was, I think, a notion of the culture we had built over the course of COVID and working in our basements, that roles, levels, who's who doesn't matter. It's a matter about getting the right outcome. And I think it was a fundamental change in our company's culture, who we hire, how we're trying to act, and that plays out through everything and every aspect of the company.
Yeah, yeah. I think that that's a good segue into our next topic, and you're talking about culture and changing culture. Talking a little bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion at Deluxe. I know yesterday, you had members of your team that were talking about this as well. So you've made, a lot of investments. But, with Illoominus, we work with leaders that are across different industries. And oftentimes we're asked, what industry are you seeing the most amount of traction in? And what's interesting when we look at the benchmarking that we have of cross-industry, and I have the numbers here, but if you look at the financial services industry, you have women at 53.6% across the industry. You have Latinx employees at 13.02%, Black and African American employees at 12.29%, and employees of Asian descent at 12.99% as you look across Greater Places to Work survey results. And the only industry where you have more women represented is actually healthcare. But when you look at healthcare, you see less representation around things, areas and representative groups like African American employees, Latinx employees, and employees of Asian descent. So I think, one of the things that I'd really love to learn from you is, why do you think that you are seeing more representation in financial services? Where does that come from, first off? I mean, is that kind of the role of banks within communities and always being tied closely to communities? Is that what you're hearing from your employees, or is that something that you're hearing from your customers? Learning a little bit more about where do you think that is coming from?
I think it's a really insightful question. I think that the financial services and fintech specifically have been at the forefront of DE&I, because it's really a reflection of the customers that use the products. There is nothing really more personal than your money. And so if you're going to serve the entire population, it's really important that the leadership and the rank and file of the organization understand the customer and live and walk in the same shoes as the customer. I think that's how the financial services industry and fintech has really has been focused on that. I can give you a perspective about Deluxe, and in the last 3 years, I guess the most important point is it doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen by wishful thinking or signing a pledge and saying, yes, we should do that. It only happens by making deliberate choices and setting goals and targets for yourself and going about achieving them. And in the 3 years since we started the transformation at Deluxe, we've made a lot of progress. Our new chairman of our board is a woman. There are only a handful of women in Fortune 1000 companies that are chair of publicly traded companies. She also happens to be an African American woman. And so she's doing an awesome job and an incredible partner for the company. We've added 3 board members, an additional Black female who's the president of American Family Insurance. We added Paul Garcia, our first Hispanic director, has been noted as one of the top Hispanic directors in the country. And the same thing is true on our management team at the senior leader level, where we've got our population overall as a company is more than 50% women. We're very well represented across other demographics, including race. And even at the leadership level, we're very well balanced across the board. And I think it's important. And it's important because if we're not modeling it and doing that at the top, no one through the rest of the organization will be as motivated to help drive that change if they don't think the leadership is doing it. Back to the point about what happened in COVID, people are just really dramatically demanding leadership. And that plays out here with DE&I also.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing what you're doing at Deluxe. Why do you think that this industry, though, why financial services, why is fintech positioned to continue to be a leader in DE&I and within this space?
Do you know what? I think so first of all, I think it goes back to who is the customer, right? That's number one. Because if you want to grow a business, it's all about aligning with your customer. But I think there's also we're at an important moment in our sort of history as a nation, in that fintech and financial services is undergoing to the ground total reinvention about everything that we do, and that gives you the opportunity to rethink your organization. And maybe more staid, less change-driven organizations don't have that same opportunity. But it just wasn't very long ago, people had never heard of this thing called, a blockchain and crypto and digital receivables. I mean, all of that was, just a handful of years ago, fringe out on the outside limits, and that's becoming mainstream, and that requires organizations to think differently, and it gives an opportunity for organizations to organize themselves, attract different talent, promote people, and I think it's the combination of focus on customers and trying to look like your customer, and so you can serve them better, and also this opportunity to fundamentally reinvent itself.
Yeah, wonderful. So on our next topic, innovation, changing technology, a lot of the conversations are here at the conference, talking about metaverse, changes in e-commerce. At Deluxe, on the small business side and for your small business customers, you're providing so many technologies that they use every day. I looked around your website, there's anything from a logo maker to you're providing tools like HR tools and payroll tools on the site. Tell us a little bit about what's on the horizon, especially for these small business customers that you're seeing and that you're really excited about.
So, you obviously done lots of homework again. Our company provides services wherever a business is in their life cycle. So even if they're not incorporated, we can help them incorporate. If they don't have a logo, we can help them design a logo. We can help them design web pages, host web pages. If they need to accept credit cards, we can help them with credit cards. If they want to do direct marketing, we can help them with that. If they need help with data and analytics, we can do that. And so we really position the company to be a service provider throughout the life cycle for small business. We made our largest acquisition in the company's history a year ago on June 1st, which was to fill a gap in our portfolio around ability to accept credit cards and debit cards. And overnight, we became one of the top 10 merchant processors in the United States. But we think that's just the beginning. Having all of these pieces is really just the beginning. We're very focused on building platforms that our customers will build their business upon. And so we're very focused on payments, and we're focused on data analytics, promotional products, and of course our legacy business checks. In each one of those areas, we're building a platform. So for example, in our digital AR and AP suite, we provide an integrated solution that allows a mid-sized business, I'm not talking about Walmart, but a mid-sized business to manage their receivables and payables in one simple to use user interface that has many modules plugged into it. So whether you need lockbox, whether you need credit card payments, whether you need remote deposit capture, if you want to be able to send a payment electronically rather than writing a check, we have that capability, and provide that on the desktop to that mid-sized business to make their life so much better. And we sell that through banks, not under our brand. We sell it as a bank-branded service. But we think that's what's coming in payments. Simplification, streamlining, where payments become just the utility that the marketplace uses. It's there all the time. It just happens. You don't have to be worried about, did it settle overnight? Do you have availability? It just works. And that it becomes part of the infrastructure of what businesses use. In our data business, we're building a platform for banks to use to help them find and identify their next customer. And even in our promotional products business, where we have customers like Porsche Motors, where we provide all of the merchandise for their racing series, the Carrera Cup, and what you would see in the back of one of their stores. But it's not just about delivering the product anymore. We provide a platform and technology that these guys use and put their brand on. And if you look at RE/MAX or LPL, which is a financial wealth management company, they take our platform, they put their brand on it, it's connected into their platform. And so if you're a RE/MAX agent, you log in and you say, I need a yard sign, I need business cards, I need a mailer, I need a brochure, I need directional signs. provide all of that from that platform, and they buy it online and customized for their very specific need on that platform. So they're building their business in the platform. So we say that not only is the company becoming a payments and data company, we're becoming a platform service company because we think that really is the future. We think businesses will want to consolidate where they transact and where they do their work in fewer places that can help them do more.
Wonderful. How do you think that new technology is going to ultimately benefit small business owners and potentially lead to the growth of more small businesses?
So the biggest thing that a small business, we spent a lot of effort researching small businesses. No small business gets formed because they decide, you know what, I really love accounting. Maybe you do if you're an accounting firm, right? But nobody wakes up and says, gosh, I really want to be able to manage, I want to get up and start a business so I can manage my finances. They start a business because they're passionate about something. They're passionate because they're a baker. They create art. They sell hats. Whatever it is that is their passion, they want to spend all of their time on their passion and as little time as possible in running the infrastructure. And so we think more and more small business owners are going to be looking for help in just running their business to make that easier and more streamlined, where they have better reports so they don't have to think and don't have to do a bunch of queries to understand where they are and log into their bank account and see what check came in the mail, be able to see it all in one place so they'll be able to manage their business much more effectively and simply. It's the single biggest, I think, pressure, trend, demand that small businesses want. And I think by solving that and making it easier for small businesses to start and operate, there'll be great opportunity for small business expansion and honestly, new small business starts.
Wonderful. So we've heard a lot of terms throughout the course of the conference, and we've heard discussion of a lot of new technologies. So things like metaverse, things like crypto, artificial intelligence. Some of that may potentially seem inaccessible for a small business owner. What new emerging technologies that are coming out do you feel like are going to have the most impact on a small business, a medium business type customer?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to think about those emerging technologies as things that can be some helpful today, but definitely have a long-term play and benefit for small businesses. And again, I think small businesses are looking for someone to bring those things to them in a very consumable way, in a way that they can digest, where they don't have to be an expert on AI. They just know that it works, that they're benefiting from being able to use those tools. And our company is doing that with our data solution. It's completely based on AI that gets smarter and smarter every time it ingests more data. And we can deliver that to the small business without having to explain to them, here's how it works and here's what it is. All they really care about is, does it help me get the next customer better? Does it help me get paid faster? Does it help me grow my business? While all of us here are technology people and we think about technology, that's really not how the small business thinks about it. What they think about is, what is the outcome that is providing to me? And so I think the more that, and we think about commercializing these great new technologies, is to give up thinking about how cool the technology is and get really focused on what it's going to deliver for that customer, and then talk about that with the customer. And how that's going to benefit for them. And if you want to mention that it's driven by AI or machine learning, great. That's a nice bonus, but that's not what that small business needs. The small business needs a way to grow. And if you can provide that using this new technology, awesome. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. So we've talked about a lot of pieces of this change that you've experienced. And I kind of want to bring it home back to your customers again. Because that's a really important part of this conversation, because small businesses have experienced so much change in the last couple of years and are continuing to experience a lot of that change, with supply chain issues and others. And you're so connected to your customers. You have 4 million small business customers. And I was really impressed to see just how good of a job you're doing of telling the story of your customers. So I was curious if you had any good stories from the last couple of years around some of those small business customers, kind of maybe the good stories, I don't know, or the bad stories of kind of what they've experienced and how you've been a part of that journey.
So before I tell you the stories, I think there's to sort of put a fine point on how hungry small businesses are for insight and for simplicity and answers. We produce a television program called The Small Business Revolution. We wrote this book, Small Business Revolution. And the demand is so great that television program became the #1 program on Hulu, #1 unscripted lifestyle program on Hulu, and the book premiered at #2 on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. So this demand for simplicity and answers is overwhelming. And so I'll give you a couple of sort of case studies of small businesses in our really sort of quick. We have a large customer that's a distillery, a boutique distillery making bourbon. And they quickly identified in the crisis that while people were definitely going to consume their bourbon, there was also a huge need for hand sanitizer. Mm-hmm. And hand sanitizer at its core is alcohol, which is the same thing that a distillery produces. So we have several customers that are distillers that were able to quickly slow down the bourbon production, sadly, but instead to step up production of hand sanitizer and the alcohol that could go into hand sanitizer. We saw a number of our restaurant customers pivot from in-restaurant dining to go ordering and helping them go online to have easy to order from a website or from a mobile app. And I think those are about pivoting your business model to solve the need at hand. And I don't think anybody really expected, a distiller didn't wake up in one morning and go, I'm going to get in the distillery business because I love making bourbon, but I'm going to make hand sanitizer instead. We had a number of textile companies that moved immediately towards making face masks. Because remember back at the beginning, there weren't face masks available. And so I think those are about stories about change and about adapting to the market need and honestly delivering again what the customer needs and what the customer wants. And those businesses was common about all of them. They all had grit. They all had to have a vision. They had to listen to what the customer needed. And then they had to be bold, and they had to take a step to go act. And that's what I think is so great about small business.
Yeah. Well, we've covered a lot, and we've covered a lot of change, but you've seen a lot over the last couple of years as well. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to make sure that we touch on before we close out?
You know, I think that in addition to this whole notion of do you just have to lead, and I know that it seems like, yeah, I've heard that 100,000 times in my life, you have to. You have to. A second thing that I think is super important, and I think we all learned this lesson, but you just have to have courage in times of crisis. Or when you're going to make a big change, you just have to be so convinced that where you're going is right, that you're just not going to let all the naysayers and everybody else that's in the way and saying this is hard, that's hard, inflation's high, this is bad, interest rates are up, I can't get my supplies. Yeah, that's right. Yep, that's right. But you know what? You're going to do it anyway because you believe and you're going to have the courage to persevere and you're going to have the grit to make it happen. And I think that's a lesson for all of us, whether you're a small business, whether you're a big business like ours trying to transform, mid-sized business, you better be going someplace and you better have a big vision, you better have a lot of courage to go act, and then you better just get on with it and do it and don't let the rest of it get in the way.
Wonderful. It's a great way to close out. Thank you so much, Barry.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it.
Great to be with you. Thank you.